It was my 6th birthday, and my party had just ended. We had cake, pizza, and played games. Typical American birthday party. I lived with my mum and her boyfriend. His name was Steve. For my birthday, they got me one of those plastic Fisher-Price play sets. The ones that were like 4 feet tall and had a small slide. I was extremely excited about this because it was exactly what I wanted, and I was sure it was the greatest invention since sliced bread. The playset was set up right by my door, in front of my bed. Now, before I go on to the actual part of the story you want to read, I need to give you a little background about the house I lived in. To begin with, the house was an old, blue, colonial house in upstate New York. The house was like every other home in the neighbourhood, and since Steve had just got a promotion at work, there was constantly work being done on the outside. Basically a complete remodel while we lived there. The only thing I didn't like about the house was that you couldn't get into the attic, and for some reason, bats kept getting in there, and at 6 years old, you don't like bats. My mum tucked me into bed after my birthday party at around 9 PM, a little later than usual. I remember waking up a few times that night because I was really excited to use my playset in the morning. I didn't get to play with it much on that day because of the assembly. One of the times I woke up, I remember looking at the playset when I saw 2 shadows, a boy and a girl. They looked like they were talking to one another. As a child, I didn't want to be scared, so I rationalised this as the shadows of trees playing tricks on my mind. And that's just what my mum would have said anyway. I managed to go back to sleep that night and didn't really think much of it the next day. I was born in June, so I usually didn't have class on my birthday. This meant I could spend the whole day playing with my friends. I didn't think about the shadows I saw the night before at all. I basically forgot that it happened. Until the next night. My usual bedtime was 8 PM, and my mum was pretty strict on this matter, so I was showered, in my pyjamas, and in bed by 8 o'clock exactly. I was lying in bed when I had a strong feeling something was watching me. I looked to the wall between my door and the playset, and the shadows were there again. This time, I paid more attention to it while I was frozen in fear in my bed. The shadow children seemed to be talking, but I still couldn't hear them. It also seemed like they were looking at each other, but it's hard to sense 3D direction from a 2D shadow. I screamed for my mum, and she ran into my room and turned on the light. At this point, the shadows disappeared. Mum then let me sleep in her bed that night, which she never let me do. She just assumed I had a nightmare. From then on, when I'd look at the wall at night, those shadows would be there. When this would happen, I'd call for my mum, and the cycle repeated. During this time, Steve and my mum would argue a lot. I wasn't sure why, but I know I didn't notice it at first. The house had also gone into a full remodelling, where almost half the house would always have something being done to it. I wished for school. This is back when school was fun, and all your friends would be there. I hated spending any time in the house, and I'd try to go to my grandma's whenever possible. This cycle repeated for a while. I'm not really sure what my mum thought about me telling her that ghost shadow people were in my room every night. I begged her to leave the hallway light on every single night, hoping the light would scare away the shadows. She obliged, but the light never did anything, and I would yell for her every single night. This continued for a while, but then, one night, something changed. Laying in bed, something felt different. I wasn't sure if I'd built up some sort of tolerance to the shadow people that were in my room, in the same place, doing nothing but silently talking to each other, or if I was just dumb. That night I decided that I didn't want to wake my mum up for some reason. I decided I'd be brave enough to walk right past the shadows to my mum's room. I think it'd be important to remember that whenever my mum would come by, these shadows would disappear, and I still don't know why. I walked past the shadows, and nothing happened. I was then in the hallway with the light right above me and my mum's room to my left. I remember looking up at the light and then back to my mum's room, then back up to the light. I did this a few times, and then I remember just staring into the light. I'm not sure why, but I was drawn to the light. This is where the story starts to get a little bit confusing, and I'll try my best to explain to you what I can. This next part will be what I can remember as of today. Then I'll try and fill in some blanks with what my family remembers and could tell me. After looking at the light, for some reason I decided that I didn't want to wake up my mum, which was weird because I never cared before that. I went back to bed, and the next thing I remember is sitting in the living room watching TV. There was construction all around me and plastic covers on the couches so that none of the drywall or new paint got on them. I remember I was sitting on the floor. I was just watching static on the TV. To me, this memory seems like an out-of-body experience. I feel like I was there, but I didn't feel in control. These memories are like a flash to me. I have them, but nothing in between. I only have one more memory being in that house. I was in my room, looking out my window down to the driveway. It was night time, and my mum had asked her friend's mother to come over. Her name was Danielle, but everyone called her Dee. I remember watching her pull up into the driveway and giving my mum a hug. I could hear them for some reason, and this also seemed like an out-of-body experience. I heard Dee say that there was a boy and a girl spirit in the house, but they weren't the problem. The problem was that there was a dark and evil entity in the house, and that it wanted me. Dee and my mum then proceeded to burn sage in the house. I assumed I went to bed, but when I woke up, I was at my grandma's house, and it'd been 2 months after the light incident. I felt fine when I woke up, and I don't think I even noticed anything different. I often spend the night at my grandma's house. I had my own assumptions about what had happened, but I never really talked about it to my mum until I was 16. When I woke up at my grandma's, my mum had told me that we were moving out of Steve's house, that they were breaking up, and I wouldn't be going back. As I stated earlier, I talked to my mum about this, in detail, when I was 16. The memories had bothered me for so long, and I wanted answers. I told my mum the exact story that is written above. She gave me a confused look when I told her about the part with Dee. She told me I wasn't in the house. My mum proceeded to tell me how I became more and more distant as we lived in that place. Then one day, we were eating dinner, and I just passed out, head in the plate, like out of a movie. She said I had a high fever, and looked ill. My mother is the kind of person who believes in the supernatural, and I think when I passed out, she decided to accept that the ghost stories I was telling her weren't in my head. This is when she decided to call Dee, who was known around town as being a psychic. Dee told my mum to immediately get me out of the house and that she would come over. Mother drove me to my grandma's house and went back when Dee showed up. I wasn't in the house, but I was able to recall what Dee had done and said without my mum ever telling me. My mother also told me that she didn't tell Dee anything about what I had said, just that I said something was there. Since I was sick, my grandma kept a close watch on me that night. She doesn't really believe in ghosts, but when I talked to her about it, she said it was a weird night. Apparently I was making weird noises, having trouble sleeping, and had a high fever. But then it just stopped. Like in one moment, all of my symptoms just went away. I went to bed, and that's when I remember waking up. As I sit here and write this story, I'm a 21-year-old senior in college. Every so often I think back to those events, and I'm just confused. I have no answers. I try to come up with my own conclusions, but I can never think of a rational one. I have a hypothesis for what happened, but I won't share that with you now. I want you to come up with your own conclusion. Maybe someone else has gone through the same type of situation. That was the point of writing this story. I'm hoping that someday someone will read this and be able to help me. It'd be easy to say I was possessed or something, but that just seems unreal to me. If the memories I have weren't so vivid, it'd be hard for me to believe this at all. Hell, it's hard for me to believe the memories at all anyway. But I assure you, every single detail in this story happened to me.